starting soon. Oh, story time with Mr. Lamada, where all your dreams come true. Oh, he brings to life your favorite stories with a great big smile. You won't leave lonely, won't you start all the reading? I just can't wait to be hearing story time with Mr. Lamada. He will be starting soon. Oh, story time with Mr. Lamada, where all your dreams come true. Oh, he brings to life your favorite stories with a great big smile. You won't leave lonely, won't you start all your reading? I just can't wait to be hearing.
Good morning to you and welcome to Storytime. Thank you for joining me. Happy Friday wherever you are today. I hope that you are well and I hope that your loved ones are doing well too. Thank you so much for joining in Storytime. Glad we're here together, and as you know, today it is the party of the last bonds, and indeed I do have Debbie Min here with me today and I am excited. So please get ready to meet our guests very, very shortly, but I'm glad you're here with us. Welcome to Storytime. And if you remember Debbie Min, of course, she brought us the Yuckiest Lunch Box. And of course, today we are reading the SQUABBLE sisters. So get ready for this one. And there'll definitely be more conversation around those books. And of course, what Debbie does. Thank you so much for joining in Storytime. Welcome, welcome. Happy Friday. You know when the jig is back, it is Friday. I am so glad that we're here together. Yes, not taking anything for granted, appreciating that we're here another day of learning together, another day of stories. Welcome, welcome to Storytime. Thank you so much for joining us, and I am super excited to be here with you all. Thank you. Please, as always, let me know where you're joining in from and who is joining in with you, and I hope that you have a wonderful time indeed here on Storytime, whether you're joining us live right now or indeed you join us later on our recordings, of course, in our archives on YouTube as well as Facebook. And of course, you can find us at storytimewithmrlamada.com. Thank you so much for being here. Absolutely love it. Please remember, many events happening this week, and we will be sharing all those on the Storytime platforms, including the big ride that is coming up to Sacramento, from Oakland to Sacramento, that we'll be doing to raise funds and awareness for funding that is needed for public education. So please, please look at all those and join in. Thank you so much for being here today. Very quickly, let us see who is with us, ready to enjoy a wonderful story, and of course to meet our lovely guest today. Thank you so much for joining us. Amanda, good morning to you. Happy Friday, you say. Yes, indeed. And of course, baby Pia, hugs to you from out there in gray Seattle. I hope that you can send us some of that rain out here in Oakland. We need it so badly. You've had enough. Send us some of that rain. Thank you so much for joining us. And you say we're snuggled up right now, but we'll be joining you in dancing as soon as we hear the theme song. I love it. I hope you joined me. I hope you enjoyed that part indeed. Thank you. Thank you for being here, Amanda. I appreciate you. And indeed, the weather outside may be gray, but we know we have good cheer right here together. Thank you so much for joining in. Good morning to you, Amanda West. How are you doing today? And of course, Sarah and Nathan out in snowy Illinois. Thank you so much for joining in. I am glad you're here today, as always. Thank you for joining in. And of course, sending love to Indy as well. Thank you for being here. And as you know, we do have our special guest that will be joining us today, Debbie Min. Thank you so much for joining in Storytime. Ola Olu, I see you made it, my brother. Good morning to you. Thank you so much for joining in all the way out in Florida. Thank you so much for being here on Storytime. Appreciate you and love you so much, my brother. Thank you so much for joining in and sending love to the family as well. Thank you for being here. Good morning to you. It seems to be very cold everywhere in the world. Right now in Oakland, it is cold by Oakland standards. So definitely we'll be getting a jacket when going outside, but it will be warming up later on. I think we should be hitting 76 degrees today, so I'm super excited for that. And Fahrenheit, of course. Good morning to you, Kennedy Kapolyo Kambamba. How are you doing? And you say good evening, of course, to Lydia as well. I will be sure to pass on that message. Thank you so much for joining in, and greetings from Turkey. Well, thank you for being here. And you say it is now snow. It is snow and very cold. Well, my brother, you can keep your snow. I'm sticking out here in Oakland. Thank you so much for joining in and ready for the story. Well, it'll be coming up very, very shortly. Thank you so much for joining us. Kennedy Kapolyo Kampamba, thank you for being here. I absolutely appreciate you. Well, everybody, without much ado, it is that time when we welcome our guests to Storytime today. They're amazing. Debbie Min, please join me and give her a warm Storytime welcome. Welcome to Storytime, Debbie.
Hello, everyone. Hi, all my readers. Turkey. Hi, Peter. Thanks for having me on the show today.
Oh, this is such a pleasure. I'm so glad you could make it.
Me too. I'm excited. Yeah. This is my fake home because I actually live in a tiny apartment in New York. It's very sad looking, so this thought I'd give you a nice little cozy home.
The beauty of the virtual world right now.
Yeah.
Oh, how is New York today? How's the temperature like where you are?
It's not too bad. It's sunny and about 30 degrees, but it will rain tomorrow.
Debbie, did you just say not too bad, sunny?
Yeah.
No.
30 is not too bad for us. And it looks like it might snow again before the season's over. So it's been a little snowy.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Well, I'm glad you're here today. And in New York, I know you've lived in the Bay before as well. What are some favorite parts of Oakland that you like? Oh, even San Francisco. I know you were here in the Bay, but mostly Oakland.
Oh, yeah. Geez, Oakland? I think there's a really great park there. I remember it, right? Wasn't there a really great park that has rowing and canoeing?
Yes, Lake Merritt, yes.
Lake Merritt. I've only been to Oakland a few times. And then for San Francisco, I definitely miss Golden Gate Park.
Yeah.
It's beautiful.
It's beautiful out there, yeah.
And I miss the weather. I used to play tennis every day. Here I don't.
Yeah.
And and I miss some of the food. Some really, really good food.
Yeah, no, we're spoiled. We're spoiled for sure over here. Yeah, no, thank you for sharing that. And I know that you have a story for us today. Not one talking about food today, but one that talks about siblings.
Mm-hmm.
I love this. Congratulations on the new book, by the way.
Thank you. It was a nice distraction during COVID. Give me something to do. Otherwise, I just watch TV all day on the couch. It's bad and eat.
Oh. Well,
but yeah, I have an older sister, so I definitely wanted to write a book about sisters.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. Well, I can't wait to get in more conversation with you. But I know everybody out there is ready for the story and they're excited. And I will pass it on to you and we'll join you on the other side of the book.
Great.
All right.
So this is the reading of The SQUABBLE Sisters, and it was illustrated by Tran Dang. What'd I do wrong this time? I put gummy bears in Hazel's cereal as a nice morning surprise. I thought she'd be happy. Instead, she groaned and then stomped to her room. So I finished my bowl and then hers. Delicious. I hope my background's not ruining this story. Hazel is my older sister. She's 9 and I'm 6. My name's Olive. I love my sister Hazel, but she doesn't like me much. I draw pretty flowers on her notebook, and she never praises me. Do I have to take my background off, Peter?
What's that?
Do you think I should take my background off, or it's okay?
I could see it. Let's try one more time.
Okay.
Yeah.
Even though jam sandwiches are my favorite, I gave mine to Hazel. I even put it in a math book so she'd find it easily. Maybe she hates jam, but who could hate jam? We have weekly chores and I love mine. Hazel scoops Nugget's poop and cleans Mr. Tweet's cage. She also takes out the trash. She's very good at her chores. I work hard too. I water the plants, feed the dog, and sing good morning to Mr. Tweet. I always finish before Hazel and go outside to play. This makes Hazel mad, but she's always mad. She argues with Mama. Why does Olive have such easy chores? It's just not fair. But Mama says, well, Olive is too young to take out the trash. She hates it when Mama says those words. The other day, Hazel didn't finish her chores in time to see her friend Rory. I drew fairies on her bedroom wall to cheer her up, but Hazel yelled, "Get out of my room, you fairy freak!" and slammed the door in my face. I decided she'd need a real gift, something to show her how I truly feel. That didn't turn out so well. This morning, Hazel slipped and fell on a puddle of water. Uh-oh, I poured too much water on the plant that day. Hazel screamed, "I can't take it! You're such a princess!" She lunged at me, and I tripped over a cord. Crash! Bang! Mama ran into the room and yelled, "How did this happen?" We both stayed quiet. Mama looked from Hazel to me with her hands on her hips. "Who did this?" she asked. I began to shake. I had never been in big trouble before. Hazel watched tears fall down my face as I shook. Then she sighed and said, "I did it. It's all my fault." Mama's face went stern. "Hazel, no TV and no play date with Rory." "Oh no, it was my fault too." I covered my face and cried harder as Hazel went to her room. That night, I lay awake thinking about Hazel and all the nice things she had done for me. She taught me how to tie my shoes and used to help make my bed. Then I thought about our fight and my stomach ached like I'd eaten too many gummy bears. I felt that bad. How could I make it better, I wondered. Then I had an idea. The next day, I woke up extra early and cleaned Mr. Tweet's cage. When Hazel woke up, she smiled at me. I couldn't remember the last time she did that. My heart filled with gooey grape jam. The day after, I took out the trash for her. Hazel whispered, "Thanks." She liked what I was doing. I said, "I'm sorry you got in trouble. Thanks for telling Mama you broke the lamp. I was really, really scared." Hazel patted my head. I could tell. Then I said, "How about we do all the chores together? I think it'll go faster, and then you'll have time to see Rory." Hazel agreed. Maybe she doesn't hate me after all. The end.
Oh, yay. Oh, thank you so much for reading that story to us.
No problem.
Yeah, it is
I
such a sweet story. And one that I personally relate to, just having sisters. I had, probably two sisters and lots of cousins, but there was always just those moments when it's like, I want this done this way. No,
yeah.
I think the hardest was when my sister would want to study and we were playing the radio at the loudest possible.
Yeah.
No, you cannot do that. It's just a struggle. Coming back to, like, I know that this is your latest book.
Mm-hmm.
I want to talk about the other one as well, the Yucky Lunch Box. But for this one, what was the inspiration?
I really wanted to write a story about my sister because we're really close, but we're 5 years apart. So we fight a lot. We fought a lot growing up. We still kind of argue and bicker because we're pretty different. And so I started out just writing different ideas about sisters and things we fought about as kids.
Mm-hmm.
And then as I was looking through the internet, looking for ideas and more stories, I came upon this Twitter post of this woman named Alexandria Bishop. And it was about how she and her sister are so different. I mean, look at how different they look.
Yeah.
So one is rainbow, and she has completely rainbow hair. Her name's Jessica, and she's a teacher.
Oh.
And her sister Alexandria is sort of like, I don't want to know if I want to say goth, but she has a very like dark goth emo look. And she's a tattoo artist, and she's also an illustrator.
Oh.
And so she's very artsy. And so I just thought that the image was so funny and cute. And I was like, I'd love to write a story about them as kids and like how different they are. And I just thought the illustration of that would look so cute, just to have like a goth or a kind of an emo type sister with like a rainbow sister.
Yeah.
And that's how I ended up writing the story. And I reached out to Alexandria after and we talked about it. And, got her blessing.
Awesome. No, I saw some of that conversation on there too. That's pretty cool. Are you and your sister, like, what are some things that you'd say are different?
So I'm very extroverted and she's very introverted. So growing up, I always was out with my friends. I was always playing and getting really dirty because I used to climb trees. And she was always at home trying to be neat in her yard. So whenever I came in and I tried to hug her or touch her, she'd always complain that I was dirty or I smelled.
Yeah.
And she always took really good care of her things and was very organized. And I was very dirty and messy. Oh. And so there were times when we were together where I would be messy and I would throw clothes on the floor. I would step on things. And then my mom would get mad at us for being dirty and messy and tell us to clean it up. And so she'd have to clean it up with me, even though it was my fault. So she was always mad at me about things like that. I adored her. So I used to follow her around everywhere and copy her and her friends. I used to sneak into her room and read her diary. I was so annoying. I liked her though.
Yeah, no, but like this story definitely, I feel like a lot of people can relate to it, and they see, like he's getting Kennedy in Turkey is saying, like nice story, Debbie, and just also Olaolu Ogunyemi, another author illustrator too, is saying great sibling story, and I've had the opportunity to interact with Olaolu and his brother at the same time, so we definitely feel that just sibling love, sibling fun. And then we have Amanda here who's saying, like Marlin is her oldest and says, welcome to the story time, her own little squabble kiddo sisters. And got to enjoy together. But yeah, so like it's a fun book, it's a relatable book. But one of the things that you've said to me before in the past was celebrate what makes you different. And so how do you think this book celebrates that? And how can we celebrate what's different? How could we do that in your?
Oh, that's kind of interesting. So I think that with the two of them being different sisters, it's funny how a lot of times kids can grow up in the same household and have completely different personalities. And I think that I realized that it's almost about love languages and showing your love and affection to sister. And so for Olive, the younger sister, she thinks that she can be artistic and do interesting things that she enjoys, which are eating gummy bears and grape sandwiches and fairies on the wall. Whereas she realizes later that Hazel doesn't like that. Those aren't things that Hazel likes. So Olive is sort of kind of just thinking about herself and what she likes, and doing things that she would appreciate, which is not bad. I think it's sweet and the intention is good. But then later, I think I wanted to show in the book that Olive kind of grows a little bit and learns to think about other people and what they would appreciate. And so she realizes, well, Hazel likes to be helpful and she likes to do acts of kindness, and do things like teaching Olive how to tie her shoes and help make her bed. And so Olive's like, well, I'll just help her with her chores. And so I think it's great because Olive is still going to be Olive, which is she's kind of fun and happy and silly, but she's realizing now that, well, to get to Hazel, I maybe need to kind of adjust my what I do and also how I show her my appreciation. And then she finds that it works. Yeah. And so I think the great thing is then now going forward, maybe Olive will do more of that.
Yeah. And that's always, I think, the interesting thing. I remember as a kid, like certain things that confound you is when you're trying to do something nice or something that you think is nice, but it is not so for the other person. It's like, how do you not see my intention? Or how do you not, how is it not nice for you? So trying to understand that, I think that is also a great lesson that could be.
It is. And, even adults these days, there's so many times I meet adults and friends and people love to say, well, this is just who I am. And not make any difference and changes. And that's okay to be who you are and accept that. But I think it's also great to just be able to change your behavior a little bit to accommodate the other person, to show them that you appreciate them, to cooperate and get along. I think that's such a great lesson that we always push on children, but adults can learn that as well. And it doesn't change who you are. Yeah, you're still who you are. It's just showing you to learn a little empathy and sympathy and do something the other person would like.
Yeah, no, there's definitely growth needs to happen, and I appreciate that for sure. And then like coming to the other thing too, I know that you've this book is specifically inspired. Well, you had the thought already from the process. Now I'm getting from is like you already had the process. You're going through this, and part of your research came up with this story, which then helped you, like in the direction that you're already thinking. But I know with your other book, the Yucky Lunch Box, this one has a very special lesson to it. And I think right now, as we're living in this time of Asian hate and all that has been happening in our communities, why do you think your books, are even more important? Because I feel they're even more important right now. But for you, do you think they're more important right now? And, how so?
Thank you. Yeah, I do think that it was perfect timing in terms of writing that book because with a lot of the, some of the, I don't know if I want to call it Asian hate, but there was a little bit of tension.
Right.
Sometimes there was elder attacks. Some of it could have been COVID related where people were placing the blame on China or certain things. And I did feel even tension in New York while I was walking around. And I think that, like even we as a people, like Koreans, were taught not to speak up, so if something happens to us that's a little bit negative or a little bit angry, we're taught to just kind of keep it in and to try to keep cooperating. But I felt like this was kind of a platform for a lot of Asians to actually speak up and say, hey, we do experience racism too, and feeling like a foreigner and being treated like a foreigner. And so I was thinking about when I was young, even though I grew up in California and LA, which is very cosmopolitan, I did remember bringing these, they're called kimbaps, but they're essentially like sushi rolls to school. And the kids made fun of me and they said that it smelled. And I was so traumatized from it, I basically never brought it to school again. And I never talked about it. And it's just one of those things that, you just kind of suck up and you just learn to assimilate and grow. But I think nowadays people with children are actually, parents are much more, they have a lot of higher emotional intelligence and they're talking to their children about that. And, even like these forms of bullying. And so I thought it was the perfect time to write this book and just make it this point about like, hey, let's embrace our heritage. you know, and like, let's talk about our forms of racism. And it was really great because I had friends reach out to me and say, I'm sorry, this is happening to you. Do you experience racism? And have
Right.
you? And I was like, I have in the past. And they're like, oh, that's so interesting. You've never talked about it. And I was like,
Mm.
well, maybe I should, but I just didn't. And so I
Right.
guess this was a form of me sharing this story and talking about it and having friends, family, and strangers come up to me or reach out to me on the internet and say, thank you for sharing the story. A similar thing happened to me. And
Yeah.
I was so surprised that so many people have experienced a similar story. And it didn't have to be Asian. It could be people from all countries. I had people from Argentina, Peru,
Right.
India, everywhere reach out and say they had a similar experience where they were embarrassed about a native food or cuisine.
Yeah.
And someone made fun of them.
Yeah. No, totally. And you know, like it is definitely, you know, like learning that needs to happen every time. And I feel like that's what we get when we have books that are representative. And you know,
Yeah.
like having books, I know, you know, like you mentioned growing up in LA, did you see books like this growing up? And
No,
what can
never.
you do? Yeah, like how about now? I know you're, you know, you're self-published too. So
Hmm.
some of those struggles that you have in putting stories out there, meaningful stories that,
Yeah.
you know, represent who you are.
Yes, I would. I'm so glad you brought that up. I would have loved to have seen and read a story about this and just know how to handle it or that that's
Or you can
normal
always
what I'm
come back
going
to
through.
story time.
Yeah. And so like, yeah, I would have loved to have to see Asians and people who look like myself in storybooks.
Mm.
And I'm seeing a lot more of that these days, which is so great. And so many, you know, books and book influencers and people like yourselves on Instagram and YouTube celebrating diversity and stories about diversity. So thank you for doing that because
Oh,
it's
no.
so great to be able to share these stories. Um, and so, yeah, I often write stories that I would have loved to read growing up. And so that's also what I keep in mind when I do the illustrations. I
Yeah.
don't illustrate myself, but when I work with people, I really love this. It's called like chibi or a manga type look. And I love just the cute eyes and looking cutesy. And so those are kind of the stories. And I would have loved to read a story about opposite sisters and, just an Asian heroine dealing with how to be proud of her heritage and having a talk with her parents about it. Because
Yeah.
my parents didn't really relate, and so I didn't really bring it up and talk to them about it. And I love that the mother could kind of comfort her and
Mm.
do things that my parents didn't really know how to do.
Yeah. No, that's it is I love that you know you bring that story. It is important to tell our stories and seeing them out there. And most otherwise other people would tell them for us.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. It won't be
And
us.
it's very healing too. Like I found that like I'd forgotten about this story, but I do remember at the time that I was pretty sad and traumatized about it
Yeah.
because I never brought Korean food to school ever again. But I didn't tell my mother why. And so as I wrote this story, I realized that I had feelings about it and I was kind of upset and embarrassed about it as a child. And so
Yeah.
writing this has been really cathartic and therapeutic.
Yeah. Oh, that's so good to hear and to see like how long, even after, you know, so many years, you still get that feeling that, you know, like whatever
Yes.
happens still, yeah, stays with you. And so it is important really to be having these books and having these conversations and celebrating the differences that we have, you know.
Yeah.
And another thing that, you know, that was happening right now that we're in, and honestly, I appreciate your, you know, your honest just sharing on this, you know, like such a difficult topic. But I just wanted to make sure that we talked about that as well. And just, you know, like, especially because at times we don't, unless you step into someone else's shoes, you won't know what they're going through. And
Mhm.
sometimes, you know, I feel like, especially with the Asian community, there's always this model minority tag. And so
Mhm.
sometimes, you know, like I feel like a lot of it, a lot of important lessons are lost in that because you just think, oh, everything is okay.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so just thinking too, you know, like now, you know, adding on a layer, it is Women's History Month. What does
Mhm.
that mean to you? And how is it being an Asian woman or just being a woman in the world and navigating?
Yeah. Women's History Month is a great month. I wish it was year round. um, I think for me, it's important to have strong heroines and strong female characters in all of my books. I mean, I think it would be hard for me to write from the perspective of a boy anyways, because I haven't had that experience. But I think that for me, I want all of my characters to be women that aren't afraid to show their emotions and to be honest with themselves, that want to be growth centered and that want to learn and be confident and strong and brave. And so those are all things that I would have loved to learn when I was younger. And I would have loved to have characters that do that. And I think growing up, there were a lot of books like that with women characters, but sometimes they were a little bit wooden and they didn't have the whole range of emotions. And they weren't people I could relate to. And so like for me, it's important with the Nari book. She's kind of an emotional person. She's sensitive. She cries. She gets upset. She's often scared, but a lot of times she'll push through it. Yeah, a lot of times she'll push through it and like do the hard thing. And I think that that's sort of an important lesson about courage and bravery is that you can still be scared and it's hard, but you still try and do it anyways. And then for Squabble Sisters, I don't know if there's as much a confidence in there, but it's just a story I enjoy. But there's a second Nari book coming out in a few months. So it's just continually about women trying to learn lessons. And I like that, her mom is her role model.
Yes.
And she learns from her mother.
Oh, that's awesome. And, you mentioned, having, we all need heroines. We need, people to look up to. And for you, who was it? Who was that? Let's start with maybe somebody close to you in your family and then maybe an outside person as well.
Definitely my sister, because I felt like she could relate to the experience of being Asian American and growing up in a household where, our parents were immigrants and they worked hard. They didn't have a lot of time for us because they were working so much. And so from her, I think I learned so much about how to adapt to life and adjust and learn to navigate myself socially, like how to deal with friends, how to deal with rejection, dating, studying, all that stuff. So she was really a big role model for me. And then in terms of on like a larger level, I would say I didn't have a lot of great role models until maybe I was in my 20s and 30s. And a lot of my role models ended up being businesswomen, like Diane von Furstenberg. I liked her story of how she basically married a prince, but decided she wanted to be a working woman. And so she left her marriage, and started a design career when she was like in her late 30s and 40s. And I love the idea of people starting over, second careers. Martha Stewart was also a great role model because she started her catering business when she was 40. And I love this idea of women reinventing themselves, starting a new path, pushing through it, learning something new, because we're never too old. I mean, I'm 42 and I just started released my first book last year. So it's never too late to pursue a new path. Yeah.
No, that's amazing. No, and you talk of that, it reminds me, I don't know, for those that are listening in, just a reminder too that we're talking to Debbie Min, the author of the Yuckiest Lunch Box, which we read here on Storytime. It is a Storytime 5-star review we give it. And of course, the latest, the Squabble Sisters, which you just read today as well. And of course, you can find out a lot more about this one by going back to this video later on, and of course, finding it where you find books. But one of the things, Debbie, I wanted to touch on was, with the story you talked about, listening to women's stories, people reinventing themselves. One of the podcasts that I listen to, or one of the shows that I listen to a lot, is how I created this, or how I built this.
Is it how I made it? Or I love that one.
How I built this, or something like that.
Or how I built this.
And just listening to those stories to see how just like the struggles that people went through, or like the different paths that people take. And it's just always so amazing to see, which, like as you're talking about that message, it just reminded me, it's like, that is so true. I love listening to those stories, because sometimes in my own, like my own aspirations, my own thinking, it's like, oh. But one of the things that you mentioned too is you've worked with illustrators that, fit a certain way that you find, you know, that the work matches with what you like. And so how
Mhm.
has it been as an independent publisher? How has it been
Yeah.
finding illustrators? How have you gone about finding illustrators? And also, how has that experience been for you?
Oh, interesting. Yeah. So, I did want, so I use this app called Fiverr, which is really great. It's Fiverr. Amazing. It's like a gig work type app, and you can find anything and everything on that app. So that's been really useful for me to help find, editors, beta readers, people to format my book
Hmm.
into something that I can upload or self-publish on Amazon and Ingram Spark. So for any would-be authors, that's a really great resource to use. And I've also found my illustrators on there. So my Yucky Lunch Box illustrator was, he's a male from Indonesia. His name is Wafik. And for my female illustrator, her name is Tran, and she's from Vietnam. And for me, I thought it would be really great to use Asian as well as female illustrators whenever I could, just give them those opportunities. It doesn't always work out that way. So far, it's worked out that way, but that's just something that I wanted to do because there are also books about diversity. So I've reached out to them. You can negotiate or create some sort of a contract on there, and then you kind of go back and forth and figure out the illustrations and work there from there. But it's so great because he's from Indonesia and she's from Vietnam, so I've never even met or worked with anyone from people halfway around the world, and I've never met them in person, but we communicate via email, and it's great.
Yeah, and those are some of the things I feel like advantages of being an independent publisher. I guess in this case, because I know there's so many difficulties and so many hurdles that you have to go through. But would you put this down as one of the advantages of it?
Yeah, I would agree, because in the beginning, I really didn't know what I was doing. And then I found that actually more than writing, or just as much as writing, I really enjoy the process of putting together the books because I have full creative control. And so I can decide how many illustrations I want, exactly what I want the illustrations to look like, the book size, the style. I can just make all the decisions myself. And I've heard from people, from publishers or from authors who are published, that often you submit the text and then they decide everything. They choose the illustrator, they choose the paging, the size, all the style, and you basically just wait a year to see what it looks like. So that part has been really, really fun. It feels kind of artistic and interesting, and it's not something I've ever done before.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. And then how did you get into writing?
So as a child, I did enjoy writing. I didn't do it a lot because I believed I was a terrible writer. I wonder if one of my teachers told me that or something. But it was always a dream of mine. Those bucket lists you have. I had one like for goals under 30 and under 40 was to publish my own book. And so I had this previous career where I worked in public relations, and I worked with like luxury, fashion, beauty, spa, and wellness products. I didn't enjoy doing it. I didn't enjoy a lot of the people I worked with, but I had to make a paycheck and do it. And then I would say before COVID, a few years back, I started writing in my spare time. And then it was just sort of ended up being the perfect time to release the book, to my first book, and to go with it and try it. Because it'd been something I thought about and talked about forever. So my husband's like, just do it. He was like, no one needs to know about it. It doesn't have to be perfect. If it's terrible, it's fine. Just do it. So I just needed that push, that tough love. And so I was like, oh, because I kept thinking it was never ready. And I think that's something I hear often through people and adults is, oh, I want to do this, and I'm always like, what's stopping you? It's all the excuses. I'm not ready. I don't have time. I don't have the money. I don't have everything. But I know publishing books is much cheaper than, if someone were to open like a brick and mortar store. But I'd say, like, at least with my books, like, they're never going to be ready and they'll never be perfect. But once I did it, it felt good to be like, oh, I can just do it, and it doesn't need to be perfect.
And that's the thing too, because you have the vision in your head, but nobody else has that. So it might not be where you fully want it, but these are brilliant books. These are beautiful books.
Oh, thank you. And you know what?
For me, I just like looking at. I love these books, and it's just like I don't see that what you're saying, but I understand it because you've birthed it, right? So it's really
Right,
important
right.
to
So
see
in
that.
your mind, it's never finished, and you're always like, it could be better. Does that part sound weird? And I honestly wanted, for my own achievement, I wanted to do it, but I also wanted to do something to make my parents proud of me and my nephews and nieces. I have
Oh,
8
yes.
proud of me, and something they could enjoy and read. And so it's been
Oh,
fun for them to read it too.
yeah, and I
Uh,
know that in this one, in the Squabble Sisters, you specifically mentioned it dedicated to my sister Susie, my nieces
mhm,
Cabby and Rory, and to all the
mhm.
sisters in the world. I just
Yeah.
yeah. And why is
Um,
that dedication particularly important for you in this one?
I think because my family, my friends, and nephews, they've been such a support group and community for me my whole life. And even
Yeah.
when I talked about writing books, people have always been supportive. So I wanted them to know that I appreciate it,
No.
even if that makes them excited just to see their name in print in a book. So like my next book, I'm going to dedicate to my other 2 nieces and things like that, and then they love doing that. And so, and I want to thank them and then let them know that they mean something to me and they're important to me. So
Yeah. Yeah. No, I can't
yeah.
wait for Nari's next adventure. It sounds like it'll be an exciting one too.
Yeah, I'm waiting on the illustrators doing the 3rd round of revisions, and so hopefully I was hoping to get it out by May, which is Asian American Heritage Month, but I don't know
Oh.
if that will be the case. So, but
Yes.
hopefully in the next 2 to 3 months it should come out.
You do come out. Yeah, no, I absolutely love it. And, like I appreciate you coming here to story time and just also introducing us to these books because I think these are such powerful topics and I appreciate what they bring, what they mean. And I know it too because at one time I was on a bus and
Mhm.
I there was just a smell that wafted through, right? And I could tell, I knew that smell because in Zambia we cook a lot of dried fish, and I could tell, I was like, this is dry fish, boiled dry fish, and for me it was a good smell. I was just like, oh, and I saw there was a lady sitting with the pot next to her.
Mhm.
And so, but then like a few of the people on the bus started opening the windows, kind of like making it clear, like, oh, no,
Oh,
this is this and that. And later on, I got in conversation with that lady and found out she was from Senegal and, like originally, and that dried fish is, like big there and stuff. And so to just think too in that moment, like reading this book and thinking of that time when I actually thought I was like, I should talk to her and just let her know that, hey, your food is good to me. I know it. I know it. But for
yeah.
people who didn't, like, there was all this, like, when people open windows to make a point, I was like,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
you
That's
can't do it.
sad. That's
Yeah, and I
hurtful.
just felt so bad for her because she was just sitting there and just, like she had just made this food, I'm sure, from somewhere and was taking it. So I was just like, yeah, but
Yeah.
it is a story that, like I can totally relate to. And I'm sure people relate to it in many different ways too. And then with the Squabble sisters, I mean, I've gone through fights with my sisters and then we come back and we're
Yeah.
good and but it's all part of life and I love that you bring those in such a child friendly way and also like even if my
Thank
sisters you
you.
don't have to like the same things, you don't have to get along in
No.
everything, and so I really appreciate that.
Yeah, it's so funny. My dad always says families fight and then they make up. We make up. That's it.
Mm.
Because I would, whenever I get into arguments with my sister, I would complain to my dad. Even to this day, I get into arguments with her and I get annoyed. And my dad says, "It's fine. You're family. You make up. You fight and you make up. It's no
Yeah.
big deal."
Oh.
And I think that's so true. And
Yeah.
like, yeah, going to your point about food, I think it is sad because food is such an important gateway into a culture and it's a point of pride.
Yeah.
And it's like, it feels like home, right? It feels like home for you. And it's
Oh,
memories of your parents and your families cooking that food. And then for
yeah.
people to treat it insensitively is tough.
It is
So I would hope through this book and just in life that people are be more sensitive to other people's food and that parents would expose their children to more types of cuisine.
yes.
That would
No.
be amazing.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Debbie,
I
I
would love to try Zambian food.
yes, no, next time you're in the
Tell
Bay
me a great restaurant in New
or
York. I
whenever,
would love to go.
whenever our paths cross in person, absolutely. Like any excuse for me to make Zambian food, I will
Yes.
jump on it. So yeah. But thank you so much for being here on Storytime today.
Thank
And
you so
just,
much for having me, Peter.
oh, it's been such a pleasure. And honestly, too, like just thinking before you go, is there anything else that you have out there for the little ones and also, even adults? Just what's another thing
Um,
you have for them?
Nothing yet. Maybe one day I'll write a book for adults.
And thank you for sharing your story. And it is so important. It is important that we see books that represent us, books that help others glean and learn about our cultures, learn about us in the right way, in the way we want our stories told. And
Mhm.
I appreciate you for doing that and bringing this story here. We have little ones that join in here, amazing little ones, and I know they're picking up something from here, and we just want to keep learning, keep sharing that here on Storytime. And that's why, like this platform is here to make sure that we bring diversity, and we'll do our very best. So thank you for being here today and sharing your story, and for the wonderful work that you're doing.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. And thank you, readers. It was so great to connect.
Thank you so much. I'll join you on the other side. Thank you, everybody, for joining in. That was Debbie Min, of course, the wonderful, wonderful author of two amazing books that we have. And as you've heard for yourselves, there is more to come. And of course, the first one that we read here on Storytime and were introduced to was the Yuckiest Lunch Box. And this one she had illustrated by Wafik Sehat. And then, of course, today we read this one, the wonderful SQUABBLE sisters. And this one was illustrated by Tran Dang. So I am glad you're here with us, joining in for those stories. Thank you for being here. Please tell your stories. Always share your stories. We want to hear them. Share your authentic self. And trust me, people will gravitate to you that appreciate you for who you are. Thank you so much for joining in Storytime today. And of course, a big happy birthday to you, Martha Ashley Mlenga. Thank you so much for joining in. Happy birthday out there in Boston. Thank you for being here. Glad you're here on Storytime on your birthday. Thank you for spending time with us. Absolutely appreciate you. Thank you so much. Ola Olu Ogunyemi. Thank you, my brother, for being here on Storytime. Baby Bia, Amanda, and of course, Marlin, sending you hugs, hugs, hugs. Thank you so much for joining us on Storytime. And to everybody that was here today, Betty Deshay and Rikia, thank you for joining us right here in Oakland. I hope you enjoyed that story today. And indeed, I hope that you come back for more on Storytime. Next week, we are back with amazing stories and amazing guests indeed. Ola Olu Ogunyemi, thank you. I am glad you were here too. Thank you for sharing and joining in Storytime. Absolutely appreciate it. And of course, Ola Olu Ogunyemi, an author, illustrator himself with the wonderful books. Of course, the latest being Billy Dipper's Time to Shine. Find that one on Storytime platforms, but also where you find books. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining in Storytime. I am so glad we're here and we got to enjoy it together. All the way out to in Illinois. Thank you for joining us, Sarah and Nathan. Always appreciate you. Kennedy Kapolio Kampamba. Too many questions. Osafunsa funsa. Love it, my brother. Thank you so much for joining in. Kennedy Kapolio Kampamba. Of course, we'll be talking some more. Thank you so much for joining in. I love it. Thank you for being here. To everybody that joined in Storytime, this has been Storytime for today, and of course, Storytime for this week. I absolutely love and appreciate the time that we spent together, and I hope that you have a lovely, lovely day indeed, and we'll see you again next week for more Storytime. Please, if you can, go back to our archives, find all the beautiful stories, go support your local bookstores, ask for these books that we share here on Storytime, support your creators indeed. Your independent authors need you, support them, read their books, share their stories. Thank you so much for being here. I hope that you have a wonderful time telling your story, a wonderful time building your story this weekend, and I hope to see you again next week for more Storytime. Much love from me, and please remember that we will be back, of course, next week, and there is big events happening. Please support my ride happening thank you so much to the overwhelming support that has come through. We are riding to Sacramento on April 24th, and we'll be out there. So please keep donating. And if you can't donate, please share, or you can do both. Share widely, and we're raising funds for public education. I love it, and the support so far has been amazing. You are a wonderful community, and I am thankful and appreciative of all that we can do together. Thank you so much for joining in Storytime. Please join me again on Monday. Much love to you, and your loved ones. Oh my goodness. Thank you. And of course, a big thank you to our guest today, Debbie Min, sharing wonderful story and indeed her creative process and everything that goes in the importance of sharing our stories. Much love from me. Bye-bye.
Story time. Story time with Mr. Lamada. He will be starting soon. Story time with Mr. Lamada, where all your dreams come true. He brings to life your favorite stories with a great big smile. You won't live lonely, won't you start all the reading? We just can't wait to be in. Brings to life your favorite stories with a great big smile. You won't live lonely, won't you start all the reading? We just can't wait to be in.